It's changed.
It's fine, she'll get it.
Focus on the whole Bay Area.
Is everybody where we're going?
Yeah.
I just figured instead of slamming onion open when people are coming, got latecomers stuck in the traffic.
Well, good evening and welcome to Baker Hunt. I'm Mark Nyberg, Director of the Scripps Howard Center for Civic Engagement, where these lectures, the 6 at 6 lectures, reside, if you will, at NKU. What we're trying to do is connect the campus and the community. And so for the past 4 years, we began with 3 partners in the community, the Mercantile Library, the Barons of Crawford, and Carnegie. And did faculty lectures in these 3 venues. And this year, for the first time, we're doing a student version of the lectures. This is the second one this year, and we've added 3 new community partners: Baker Hunt, Campbell County Public Libraries, and Hamilton County Public Libraries. So hope you enjoy all the lectures. One of the things that's very important to us at NKU, and we have 2 my NKU colleagues here who can attest to this, including Mom. But undergraduate research is an area of emphasis at NKU. I spent the first meeting of the morning today involved an effort to focus some undergraduate research on environmental stewardship and some new grants that we're rolling out on that. It's a big deal all over campus. Our university has some graduate programs, but not a lot. It's an undergraduate university, and the great opportunity for students at NKU is to do research, faculty mentored research, creative activities at the undergraduate level. Some of that's a function of relatively young faculty coming in, maybe taking their first job, and they're out of the PhD program and they're accustomed to doing research, and they're not going to quit doing it. And they're used to working to student-faculty relationships, so they're hungry as faculty members for this, and so there's a lot of opportunity for our students to do this kind of work. So we wanted to highlight that in this lecture series, and so we work with 6 NKU students or recent graduates to do this lecture series. So this is our first at the Baker Hunt. We're happy to be here. This institution really asserts the importance of cultural activity and particularly art in our community, so it's an honor for us to be at Baker Hunt. When I step outside, it's not because I don't want to hear this, it's because our center is also conducting a forum tonight on the Brent Spence Bridge up in the Blue Park, and that's underway, and I need to get back to that. And hope things don't get out of hand there, because that's a little more controversial than this. Enjoy the controversy. Another component of that, and what Ginny's work illustrates, is the combination of research and study abroad. It's also true at the university that we think it's important for students to see the world, experience the world, and get outside of their comfort zone. Ginny has gotten outside of her comfort zone more than average. I'll tell you that my daughter, who's a student at an unnamed university in theater, called me last week and said, "Dad, I have 2 opportunities to travel this summer, one to Ireland or the other one to Singapore, but I'd like to do both." I thought that was preposterous till I saw the agenda that you've got. In any case, Ginny Shelly is a recent graduate of NKU and a current graduate student in public health at Wright State. Just took her MCAT and plans to go to medical school. I needed a doctor today, where were you? She has things to show and stories to tell, and she lived through it all. So, let me just say, comment cards, please fill those out. We'll be doing a drawing. We'll take the cards back. The drawing is, I know it's important to you, but it's an incentive from our perspective. What's really important for us is your comments and suggestions as to how this lecture went, what topics you'd like to hear about, so that we can construct the next season. So please fill those out and Colette Thompson, who's in our office and is the brains of this operation, will collect cars. So that's important for us to have those. And our upcoming lectures are on there November 14th, I believe, is the next one, and it's in the Digitorium. One lecture out of the series each year is with our partner, the Associated Press. The next lecture is that one, and we're pretty excited this year. Valerie Kumar, who is the archivist for Associated Press, headquartered in New York, will be here to talk about how the AP covered the Gettysburg Address. There were actually some different versions reported of the Gettysburg Address, so over time you had to decide which one was going to be the one we actually, I think, Lincoln gave. So she keeps the archives for all of AP and should be talking on that. In addition, she will be doing an event with students and also an instructional session, if you will, workshop for anyone who's interested in archives, particularly if you're affiliated in any way with a museum. And you can let Colette know she's keeping the RSVP list for that. But so that lecture has those additional components. But that one will probably the ones in the Digitorium tend to sell out. So no pressure, but if you want to come, buy a ticket. They're available online, and we'd like to have you there. So I don't want to take any more of your time, and I'm off to save the Brent Spence Bridge. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mark, for the really great introduction. So as you said, my name is Shelley, and tonight actually I want to just share with you some of my experiences from my study abroad trips. So Mark kind of mentioned a few of these things. I graduated in May 2013 with a BS in biology and a chemistry minor. I'm currently enrolled in a master's in public health program at Wright State University and applying to medical school for next fall. And also I'm employed at Mercy West in the emergency department as a scribe. So to kind of put things in a little bit of perspective of how I ended up at NKU, I played volleyball throughout college. I didn't want to do anything but play volleyball for the rest of my life. I had no idea what I wanted to do for a career. And then when I was a junior or a sophomore, my mother had a heart attack. And I was kind of exposed to the field of medicine. I started shadowing doctors, and I decided I wanted to go to medical school, and I wanted to help people. This led me on my first trip abroad to the Dominican Republic, which is located on an island with Haiti, shared with Haiti, where it was a mission trip. And we worked at this school in the Dominican Republic, and the missionaries had established a school there, and they were building the school for a village they had pretty much nothing. They had no church, no any kind of buildings officially where they could meet or the children could learn. So we did a lot of work with them, building a church, building classrooms. And it was the first time that I was exposed to people of a different culture. I was the foreigner now when I was there, and it was kind of eye-opening. And I loved the experience. And when I left, I told my parents, I can't wait to go back abroad somewhere else, or even go back to the Dominican Republic. And not only was it the first time I saw a different culture, it was the first time I saw poverty, unlike anything here. These houses here will house 15 people of a family, cousins, nieces, aunts. They'll share one cell phone if they're lucky enough to have a cell phone. So it's just really eye-opening in that sense. So NKU provided me with the opportunity then to travel to Ecuador when I was a sophomore. I went for 2 weeks after studying the culture of Ecuador in an honors class with NKU, and then I did an optional third week in the Galapagos Islands, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So Quito is Ecuador's capital, and this is a city that we flew into, and as you're coming on the plane, you just look down, and it's in this kind of valley, in this pit in Ecuador. Very high elevation, as everywhere in Ecuador. So, which that made, walking around, even downtown, and then hiking in the hills when we go hiking, kind of difficult to breathe. You get really short of breath very quickly. So one of the main reasons we went to Ecuador was a professor who went with us, Dr. Marion Cannon. Her mother she's from Ecuador, and her mother also, but her mother was in the Holocaust, and she flew to Ecuador after she was escaped from the prison camps, and her mother started doing artwork to kind of as a therapy to deal with what she had gone through during the Holocaust. And she's now a really famous Ecuadorian artist named Trudy Sopra, and so they turned their family home in Ecuador into a museum for her. And so we went there and we visited beautiful pieces of art. This was a hiding room that they had in their house where they could hide refugees. And we helped, this is the group that I went with from MKU, and we helped open up a gallery exhibit at the Cultural Museum. This was a rock in Quito that we visited, and they have a tradition there. If you put your hand on the rock and you walk around it 3 times in a circle, you'll have good travels while you're there. So we're going to be certain to do that before we just went any further. This is La Catedral, which is the cathedral in Ecuador. Very beautiful. Reminded me a lot of the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Their history is just everywhere. Very old buildings. And, you know, we're in a New York country, I guess, so it's kind of fun to see buildings that were much older than anything I've seen before. This is their fountain square, and it's very common in South American countries to have a fountain square in the middle of the city, and then on one side you'll have a church, a government building, a school, and then usually a bar or a grocery. And a lot of them in Costa Rica and Ecuador are built that way. And so on the top left picture is their church, and then on the top right is kind of like their White House, where their Congress members would meet and make decisions and laws. This was a church also. There's a lot of churches in Ecuador per capita, but this was a special church because this church was built shortly after the Spanish conquered Ecuador. On the inside is complete gold, and we were unable to visit this church, or we weren't allowed access in because they were having special services when we visited, but from what we heard, it's just completely beautiful, and I thought the detail on the outside of the building was very intricate and beautiful as well. And also, this now it didn't happen in the Dominican, but in Ecuador, when we would be walking the streets, there'd be little children who would come up to us, and they would try to sell you like things or kind of beg for money. And it was really sad, and I just wanted to, give them all the money I had, but I couldn't do that for all of them that came up to me. I wouldn't have been able to leave Ecuador. It was stuck there. But it was kind of, eye-opening also as well, that the children do this. This was a museum. So this is a museum not only of the city of Quito, but of Ecuador, the country. I thought it was fascinating because it used to be a hospital. And so when I visited it, it was, beautiful. And it was a hospital in the 1800s, and they turned it into this museum now. Which has paintings. This is one of the paintings in there. So this is a painting kind of depicting how they would scare people into religions using scare tactics. And so it's like different sins and depicts different sins and kind of demons. And all throughout the country, so after we left Quito, we would see these little pit stops on the side of the road. And when the Spanish conquered Ecuador, they told the indigenous people that if they didn't stop and give offerings to God, that they would have not safe travels. So it's kind of now built into their culture where a lot of people, when they're traveling on the roads, will stop, give flowers, some sort of offering so that they don't have any catastrophes during their travels. This is the Black Lagoon. It's very beautiful, this mountain kind of area. It's very Ecuadorian. It's everywhere. There's hills. But we stopped at a lot of water sources because the professor we went with is very into collecting water specimens and looking at diatoms and different things in the water. So it was really beautiful to see. We next went to the Amazon for a few days. We're on our way to the Amazon. It's about 8 hours from Quito, and our bus broke down. And we were about an hour from where we were supposed to be. We had no cell phone reception. We had no way of getting a hold of anyone. We thought we were going to die, I think. And we kind of, were like, okay, what do we do? So we tried pushing the bus for a little bit, which I don't know why, because we wouldn't have gotten very far. And I didn't have any pictures from it, and I figured probably because nobody was taking pictures while we were all pushing the bus. But eventually, one of the boys on the trip was able to get one bar on his phone and got a hold of someone in the city who then came to our rescue and helped fix our bus for us. But so our bus dropped us off at the tributary, which is a huge tributary to the Amazon River. And we took these boats with our luggage, and they took us across the river. The first thing we did when we got there is they gave us life jackets. They took us on a boat upstream and they dropped us off and told us, go ahead, we're going to wait for you down at the cabins. And we floated down on this tributary down to where we stayed at. This is a picture of where we did stay at the Amazon, and a lot of people could go there. Student groups go there. People, they have a program for biology. People who want to do research there for up 1 to 2 years can stay at this resort kind of thing in cabins, and it was really incredible, very beautiful, very isolated also. It's probably one of the most isolated places I've ever been. So to me, this is the traditional, rainforest picture. It's very cloudy. There's vibrant colors. And it rained a ton. But when we spent 1 full day there, and we're in these boats, and it started downpouring, and this girl on the right thought that our boat was just going to fill with water, and we were going to, be dumped into the river. So she picks up this bucket on the floor and starts getting water and dumping it out of the boat. So some of the things we saw there, we saw birds of paradise, bamboo in its natural habitat, which was really, I thought, cool to see. One of my really good friends on the left, he's really into bugs, and he's not afraid of bugs at all, and he was just picking up like these spiders, and we're like, is that okay to like do? And he was just like holding them. And then this is a coffee plant, right? So I really like caffeine and coffee. I appreciate coffee, I guess. So. And this is the waterfall that we saw. It was a really beautiful experience. We had a tour guide who was a native, and she told us how they would bring natural offerings to the waterfall, the indigenous people, and they would kind of sing hymns as they watched the waterfall. And she did that for us, and it was really cool. So Cotopaxi, these are pictures from Cotopaxi. Well, first, this is Tungurahua. So we're on our way to see the tallest volcano in the world, and we see another volcano erupting. And we had actually stayed in a city that's at the foot of this volcano the night before, and they had to evacuate the day after we were there. So it happens a lot. I think they're kind of accustomed to it. But it was just really, I guess, neat to see an erupting volcano. Everywhere in Ecuador are llamas. They're everywhere. They're almost as common as dogs here. So people have them like in their front yard. They use the fur to make, sweaters and different kinds of things. But they're really neat. So I really wanted to get near one, but they will spit at you if you get too close to them. So I was a little afraid to get too close to one. But it was just really interesting to see them everywhere. So this is Cotopaxi. As I said before, it's one of the tallest active volcanoes in the world. And you can do trips to hike. The majority of it we obviously didn't, because we only had there. But we did a lot around the volcano, and it was just extremely beautiful. If I could go back to Ecuador, I'd probably make this my #1 thing to see. We then went to a city called Baños and then a city called Cuenca. On our way, we paid $1 to get on this cable car and go through this valley to see these waterfalls. And in Spanish, these waterfalls are called Las Hermanas, which is the sisters. And this is a view of the valley as we're on the cable car. And I was telling my parents about this earlier, and they're like, we didn't know you paid $1 to do that. It's kind of scary. But so every city in Ecuador also has its own kind of personality, and I found that in a lot of places that I've been to. They're always just so different. And this is Baños. Baños to me was the party kind of city. It was just, there was a lot of nightlife. People were like always out. They had these buses that were kind of like party buses, like people just riding them and stuff. And this was their church there, which kind of looks like, I don't know, Disney Castle or something to me. But it was really neat. And also, I said before, the churches there, so many. This was their first church, the first Catholic church in Ecuador. So it was kind of cool to experience that and be able to see that. The Catholic religion is huge there. I think they're like 99% Catholic. They're almost completely Catholic. We also saw Inca ruins. So these were also really cool to see. And we had a tour guide with us who told us, this is where they store, wheat. This is where they store sugar cane or different kinds of things. And then showed us, this is like where a kitchen would be. Things that they've been able to detect. And you can see llamas in the background because they're everywhere. And this is the sun room, or the sun temple. And so this is the temple that the Incas had, and it was really neat, I thought, because I don't know if you guys have ever done the thing at the museum center where you can talk to someone at the different water fountains, but there's a spot like that here where you can stand on one side of the wall, and if you speak facing one wall, the person like facing some other way can hear you also. And we tried it, and it was really cool. This is Cuenca. Cuenca was by far, I think, my favorite city I've ever been to. It was very clean. A lot of Americans are starting to retire to Cuenca because it's very, inexpensive, and it's a really great city. They have a lot of historic buildings, and like I said, it's very clean, a lot cleaner than Quito or other cities in Ecuador. This is a famous artisan, Edgar Vega. He has a gallery there that was really, and we went there, and these are some of his artworks. Very beautiful. There's one here. This oil lamp that I bought from my mom and gave to her. He has beautiful ceramic pieces. This is the typical dress of people in Ecuador. Very colorful, very vibrant. Those hats that wear those hats. Men and women both wear the hats. And it was just, I thought it was really cool to see people dressing like that still. But it's part of their culture now. And not everyone in Ecuador dresses like this, but the people who have retained their indigenous nature still will dress like this. We also found out that Ecuador is the #1 producer of Panama hats. They're not actually produced in Panama. So we visited the museum and the factory where they're made, and so this is a woman who will sit there all day and she just weaves the hats. And this is part of the process of making the hats after they're done weaving. And this is a wedding dress made completely of the materials from the hats. And then you can see in the background how many hats they produce. They produce so many. And the finer the weave, the more expensive the hat. So I think there were hats for as cheap as $20 to as expensive as a few $100s. So one of our last stops on our trip was Mascarilla. Mascarilla is a little small town. When we arrived, they were all excited because they had just gotten Wi-Fi. And they were like, we have Facebook now. So it's where a lot of the Africans after slavery ended had kind of settled and made their home. They're famous for masks making, so Mascarilla is where their name comes from. But every day they have this kind of common thing where they dance, the women will dance. So these 4 girls started dancing and playing music in the street, and we come out of the building we're in. And then the older women, this is the video, the older women will start to dance. Whoops. Oh, there we go. And so the woman in the back has a bottle on her head, and it's not glued or anything. She's balancing it perfectly. And at one point in time, she then gets down on her stomach, and she's just dancing. And they do this every day as part of their heritage and their culture. So it was really neat to experience that. And then when they were all done with their, ritual, they invited some of us to dance with them and try to get us to do the dancing. So it was a lot of fun to be able to do that. So after 2 weeks in Ecuador, I went on to the Galapagos Islands, which I don't know, probably most of you have heard. It's where Darwin did his research. Very famous islands, located about 600 miles off the shore of Ecuador. And this is the first creature that I saw. This is Lonesome George. So Lonesome George is a tortoise. His name is Lonesome because he was the last of his subspecies. They tried to have him mate with other tortoises, and he wouldn't. They were unsuccessful. And he unfortunately passed away in June of last year. But my trip was before this, so I was able to see him. It was really cool. And he's kind of a symbol of conservation for the Galapagos also. These are Galapagos tortoises. They're huge. I mean, I'm in there for, for perspective, but just really awesome to see. So we arrived to this bay, and this is the boat then that we took smaller boats out to. We stayed on this boat for 5 days, going to different islands to look at the different biodiversity that's in the islands. And so every island is very different. So these are 2 shots, like panoramic shots, and you can see it's kind of red soil, kind of dry looking, very different from the rest of the islands. And on this island, as many of the islands, there are my favorite animals. They're blue-footed boobies. They're just very comedic looking. They're endemic to the Galapagos, so they're only found there. They're not found anywhere else in the world. But they have this weird, whoops.
Please stop that.
I just,
Switch it again.
This, yes. I think she has the maid dancing too. It's hysterical.
So this is their main dance, and they do this weird thing with their feet where they go, and they're just very comedic to me, almost like a cartoon or something. But I could have stood there and watched them forever, but they were like, you gotta get going. Just, they're very cute, I love their faces. This is weird. And that's their call too, it sounds really high pitched, sounds like a squeal almost.
They're not afraid of people.
No, none of the animals there, so
Are
I.
they flightless, so they can fly?
They can fly. So this is also a great frigate bird. This is also endemic to the Galapagos Islands. And he puffs up his chest like a balloon sack, and then he's able to kind of make this beating sound, sounds like a drum, and that's his mating call. While we were there, we went caving to one of the few caves in the Galapagos. It was kind of deep or far into the ground, and it was underwater. Very, very cool, but really cool. I like caving. I've done research with caving. And we did a lot of snorkeling while we were there, because that's a lot of, the biodiversity there is in the water, is aquatic life as well. A lot of sharks. They don't have any shark attacks ever, because they're so well fed. There's so many fish there that, they're like, they're never going to bother you. They're not hungry ever. This was a sea lion. So Galapagos is a lot of sea lions, and they'll come swimming up right next to you, nudge you, bother you. A lot of the islands have this black rock, so it's volcanic rock, because most of them were formed from volcanoes erupting, and then the rock hardening. And when you look at the rock, sometimes you'll see these little red dots, and from far away you don't know what they are, and then you get closer, and there are these crabs, and they're very bright, like red, covering the rocks. So like I said, the islands are all very different. So this is kind of more beachy, more probably you would think of Galapagos Islands. And on this island are where their sea lions are, and they just cover the beach. There are so many of them. They're not afraid of people because there's so many situations you kind of get within 6 inches of an animal you were supposed to. At one point, one kind of like charged me. I don't know what he wanted, but and well, let me play the videos.
Did you like the food there, Shelley?
The what?
The food and...
I almost included pictures of the food, but I have too many.
Did the food like you,
Yes, it
though?
did.
Didn't have any problems?
Some countries, no, actually, I never have. I've had people that have gone with who had, but we have a rule where we have restaurants picked out, usually on the trips with NKU, that we know are safe and know are okay. But one of our professors will always say, before any trip I've gone on or with, that when she's had people get sick on trips, it's when they eat at places like McDonald's and Pizza Hut, when they're down there. So it's not, I actually once ate food off a cart, which I was kind of gambling, because, that's probably not the best thing to do, but she said you almost universally, it's when people eat at McDonald's or Burger King or whatever, so.
One back.
Were you by chance hitting the button?
No, did it go?
It's on certain.
That's it.
There we go.
Okay. So this is the sea lions, and like I said, they will get, this guy staring at me, they're not afraid of people at all, though, it's just incredible. And I talk to them. I get that from my mom talking to animals. But they're just they're very kind of lazy, I guess. They lay around a lot, but they cover this beach. There's a ton of them there. So one of the really sad things that made me tear up on my trip, so this is a baby sea lion, and our tour guide who was with us told us that he was dying, and it's kind of clear, you can tell he's sick in this picture. But what he said is a lot of times the moms will go out to get food for the pups, and they'll be killed somehow in the process of doing so, and they don't come back. And so this baby was sick and dying, and he was trying, I watched him for like 20 minutes, he was trying to go up to other moms and other sea lions and see if they'd take him in, and because he's not theirs, none of them would. But our tour guide said that's part of the circle of life, and with the Galapagos being so highly conserved, you can't take anything there, and you can't bring anything out, so they just have to kind of stand and watch the circle of life and animals. So this is another one of the islands also, just very blue water, very beautiful. And so then I came back home. And about a year later, I was like, I need to go abroad again. And I joined a tropical ecology class through NKU, where we studied the ecology of the tropics for a semester. And then we went to Costa Rica over spring break to do scientific experiments. For me, it was perfect. It was traveling abroad in science. I was a biology major. So Costa Rica is down in Central America, so it's a little bit north of Ecuador. And Costa Rica, obviously famous for their coffee. The first place we go to, we had coffee made tableside, and they make it in this really weird way where they put the grinds up here and then add water and kind of mix it in. It was really probably the best coffee I've ever had. So to get where we were doing our studies, we took this small plane, then we took a bus to Drake Bay, and then we took a boat to this island. So we were in a very remote location in the rainforest, and these are some of the huts that we stayed in while we were there. And we did a lot of hiking, so we had camelbacks and backpacks. All our research equipment we would have to put away for our hiking. We were able to see some sites that they had there, like this giant tree, which I couldn't even fit in the entire picture. But we also saw things on our hikes too. We saw scarlet macaws. These are sloths. So sloths are kind of famous for Costa Rica animals. In Spanish, their name is perezoso, which is lazy. They're just really lazy. They move really slowly. They have these huge nails that they use to grip for climbing trees. And sometimes they're so lazy that they'll let go and they'll fall to their death. So they're just a really weird creature. There's no other kind of animal like them. They're kind of cute. They're kind of ugly though. But so this was our first study that we did. We did a snail study where we looked at, so the ocean kind of starts off right here. And we looked at the snail population from the ocean going up on this stream then into the mountain. And we wanted to see, does the snail population change the further you are away from the ocean? And we found, smaller snails were further away. They were able to make it further away, but they had more damage to their shells also from climbing up waterfalls and from moving upstream. So where we measured off sections to do our study, we took boats. This is another video. So we went kind of cliff jumping. It was probably about 25 feet up after one of our studies. And we had to trust the local that took us here was like, you guys can jump, it's safe. And we're just like, what? Like, you don't know how deep it is. But I was really glad that I did it because it was really fun. Another study we did in Costa Rica was a tidal zone study. So there's different tidal, like splash zones and different zones for the coast. And we mapped these out, we measured them out, and then we collected animals from the different zones. So this is a sea cucumber, starfish, and then here's some more of the animals that we collected. And then we looked at the diversity that you can find within each zone. And another cool thing about the research that we were doing is the professor that we went with goes on this trip every year. He goes on the science trip every other year, so he's collecting this data throughout. It's going to end up being a very long time, probably like 20 plus years. And he's going to be able to see how those changes in species have varied from the same spot, because he always takes students back to this spot specifically. So while we were in Costa Rica, this is the best picture I had of it. I went in my suitcase, and it was at night, and there's no electricity there. And I didn't have my flashlight out. My roommate goes, "Can you get me a Band-Aid?" So I stick my hand in my suitcase, and I feel something get me on my finger, and I'm like, oh. And I pick up my flashlight, I shine it, and I see this move under clothes, and I'm like, oh no. Like, we took a boat, a plane, and a car to get here. I'm not getting any help if it's like deadly. So I was kind of in shock, and the girl that was my roommate, I go, "Can scorpions kill you?" Which I knew, yes. I just wanted her to be like, no, they're fine. And she said, "I think so. Why?" And I go, "I got stung by one." And she goes, "Oh my gosh!" And she starts screaming. And she runs next door to get help. And this one girl just takes off running to go get our professor. He comes back with a venom extraction kit, and by the time he got to me, it got me right below my fingernail. My pinky was the size of my thumb, and the venom was starting to get up into my arm. And so I'm like, if I'm going to die, it's kind of a cool way to die, so it's okay. But he gets to me, and he sucks out the venom, and it took a couple minutes, and I'm just like, I think I'm feeling better. And he was like, well, I need to identify it. We need to know if we need to take you to the hospital. So he comes in, and he collects it, he puts it in a bottle, and he goes, "Oh, you're fine." And I'm like, "Are you sure?" I asked him, "Are you sure?" like 20 times. But he's been to Costa Rica so many times. I trusted him. And so he collected it for me. He goes, "You have to bring this back with you. Like, you have to get it past customs somehow." So we did. And I have it preserved now up here. But it was kind of one of my interesting stories, I guess, studying abroad.
Was there a video?
Oh, okay. So later that night, we're going on our night hike, and I have been stung by a scorpion, and I see glowing eyes in the bushes, and I go, I don't know if I should tell somebody because they're gonna think I'm dying, I'm hallucinating. And we get back to the place, and I'm about to say I saw glowing eyes, and my friend goes, "I saw a pair of glowing eyes in the bushes," and all of a sudden our professor comes up, and he has this bug. This is a click beetle. And they have these two spots on the back of their, on their shell. And if you put them upside down, they click and they pop back up. So that's why they're called click beetles. But it was just really, creepy. And it scared me in the bushes.
So it's like fireflies.
Yeah, they're walking.
Yeah, with two eyes. Do they bite?
No. They look like kind of cockroaches a little bit.
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Yeah, but it really creeps me out because all I just saw was these two little dots and a leaf in the bush. So after we did our studies in the rainforest, we went to the cloud forest. So the cloud forest is about similar altitude to Ecuador, so really high altitude. And a lot of people will go to the cloud forest, a lot of bird watchers, to see this bird called the quetzal, and that's why we went. The entire time in Costa Rica, we'd also been keeping a diary of birds that we saw and where we saw them, so we can look at location and timing of where we saw these birds. So this is the cloud forest that we stayed at, and this is the area that we hiked to see the quetzal bird. And they have a nest up in the tree. So this is a quetzal. So this is why a lot of people will come, from different countries just to see this bird. And it's really beautiful. It was really neat to see in person. They had signs on the walk too in front of the quetzals that were really neat, like Bible verses and things. So I came back to Costa Rica in March, and then I planned a trip for that following summer to return to Costa Rica with my sister, who was about to enter her second year of med school, on a medical mission trip. And we went to Panama and Costa Rica for 2 weeks. This was our team. We went with people who are in nursing school, a couple pre-meds, including myself, medical students and doctors, and we had a few translators with us as well. In Panama, we went there first, and we hiked the mountains. We did a lot of hiking in Panama because the area that we were serving there was a lot of people who didn't have any kind of contact with anyone in the health field, so they weren't able to make it into the city to receive health treatment. So this is a valley of some of the homes in Panama. This is one of the homes also. We would go and we'd ask them, is anyone here sick? If they were sick, we would make an appointment with them to come to our clinic, and we had clinic days. And so, like I said, we did a ton of hiking all over. And this is Costa Rica. So Costa Rica is a little bit different. The people we served there were mostly refugees from Nicaragua. And they were living in the city in very compact areas, very poor. And in this case, they didn't have insurance or any type of ways to get medicine. And so it was kind of a different type of missions, but also serving people who were in need. Costa Rica is famous for pineapples. You'll never have a pineapple that's sweeter than when you're in Costa Rica. That is their #1 export, and when they export them, they will cut them before they are fully ripe. But ones that they cut to be served in Costa Rica, they let fully ripe, and so they're much sweeter. And so I used as much pineapple as I could when I was there. This is our group talking to an indigenous girl, so she's kind of wearing similar clothing to that of Ecuador, but a little bit different. They don't wear the hats and not as many layers. Probably because of the temperature difference. This is an indigenous woman. This is my sister talking to an indigenous woman and asking her if anyone needed help, and I believe she did come to the clinic later. So this is us in Panama hiking. When we were hiking, there was a farmer on the side of the road who offered us sugar cane, which I had never had fresh or actually probably ever had before. And he took it, he chopped a few pieces down, and then he chopped it off for us, and he told us to just kind of like chew on it. It's kind of their candy that the kids and people will have. So it tasted very weird. It was a weird texture, but if you would, bite on it, you get like sugar water. So I can kind of understand why they use it as a treat there. So this is the clinic. We set the clinic up in a school, and we would see a ton of people. We would see from every age, from people that were 8 years old to people who were babies, 1-year-olds. And we could have multiple children of people come if they needed to see. But we would take vitals, we'd take blood pressure, we would assess them, and then we had a doctor with us that would help develop diagnosis or help determine what medication they needed to be on. This is my sister treating a man who has skin graft rejection. So he had transplant a few years back, or I think it was maybe around 10 years before, 20s or 20s. And so he came to us and I put some ointment on and I think bandaged it up. This man was borderline diabetic and I think he had not been taking the medication they gave him, and so we had to check his blood sugar a few times because it was really high. This was my favorite patient. His name was Luis. We got along really well. And I don't know, I'll probably always remember him. Really funny, cute kid. Also, the kids loved to play with the stethoscope. So these two kids kept like they'd grab the ears and they'd be like, oh, listen. They wanted to listen to their heartbeat. So it was really neat to see that too, because they were learning. I was learning a lot, but I think that they learned a lot too from us being there. This couple had been married 70 years.
Wow.
They were very, inspiring. You could tell he still loved her to death. He told us all about their first date. They went dancing and that she's like such a good dancer, and they were adorable. I loved them. And we all wanted our picture with them because it was just really inspiring. So this is some more pictures from the clinics. A couple of the interesting things we saw a lot of people with dengue fever. So dengue fever you get from mosquito bites. It's a virus. The first time you get it, you're fine. The second time you get it, it's hemorrhagic, and you'll probably die. They have no cure for it yet. So it's prominent in the areas that we served, and it was just really, I thought it was scary because a lot of people would say, oh, I had dengue before, and I'm like, oh, if you get, bit by a mosquito again, like that's kind of terrifying. We treated a girl who had a beetle that had crawled into her ear, and she kept saying that she had an earache, and my sister had her medical tool to look in ears, and we looked and she goes, I think that's like a bug, and it was a bug. But we saw a lot of different things. You know, people, a lot of, what am I thinking? Intestinal, like parasites, a lot of kids with parasites. And then, so this is our pharmacy that we would set up. We had drugs donated to us through the company that I went with called International Service Learning, and we would do rotations through treating patients and then working the pharmacy dispensing medications. And after each clinic, we would have parties for the kids. So we would invite the kids from the school that we stayed in, or the kids from the neighborhood that we worked in. And we would do face painting, we would do pinatas, kind of just so they weren't, you know, scared of us. And next time people come, they'll be welcoming and be excited to go again to meet these people. And so this is a group of the kids from the school that we had helped out at. Once we had a picture of us. While we were there also, I know some of the people had, you know, medical training, but for the couple of us who were pre-med, I had no idea how to give an injection or did 2 stitches, but we learned that while we were there. They let us practice with syringes and oranges and showed us how to do intramuscular and different types of injections, which was really neat. And then this is my sister practicing sutures on a sponge. They showed us different types of sutures to do also. But we did have some fun while we were there. We went to the Panama Canal, which was really cool because it's considered one of the 7 modern wonders of the world. We were able to see a boat go through. And then one day after clinic, I think we had like a half day of visiting houses. And a lot of people were like, we're going to go home and sleep. But my sister and I were like, no, we're not going to go home and sleep. We're going to find something to do. Because we both have traveled a lot. And these 2 girls were like, well, we'll do something with you. And our tour guide told us for $30 we could go horseback riding. And I'm like, yeah, let's go. So we went horseback riding around the mountains in Panama for only $30 from this farmer who just had a few horses. And let's we could go. It was really neat. I'm glad I didn't go back and just sleep. So after we were done horseback riding, we went to a hot springs. This is our tour guide, Polino, and he had told us that there was a hot springs that we could go visit, and for only a few dollars we could soak in natural hot springs in Costa Rica, and we're like, okay. So we hiked probably about a mile, and we get to this house where the people who owned the hot springs had their home. And as we're walking up to the house, Polino starts going, cheetah, cheetah. And then we're just like, why is he saying cheetah? And all of a sudden, this little monkey comes out, and he comes like right up to Polino, and cheetah usually only likes guys. And so Polino like picks him up, and he like puts him down, and he's like, okay, we like need to go. Well, like the 4 girls that are with us are like going crazy, like it's a monkey, you know. Who gets to see a monkey this close up? So this is Cheetah, and I took a ton of pictures of Cheetah. And then I'm sitting there, and I was like, okay, you know, I put my camera in, like, we're gonna go, and he grabs my arm. And I go, okay, that's weird, like, I'm gonna, you know, walk away from him. And the rest of our group starts walking on towards the hot springs, and I go, I gotta go, like, you gotta let go of me, monkey. And this is a video, so he grabbed onto me, and he wouldn't let go. And he then sees that the people I'm with are leaving. He decides,
Lost the bulb.
The bulb went out.
Are you sure? The lights?
I might have climbed down or I'll heat it up. It's warm. You're not seeing it.
I can see it. Oh, wait, there.
Let's try this again.
Maybe it's the video.
Explain to you here.
Is that you screeching?
That's my sister. She's taking a video. So she just sees that the rest of us are starting to leave, and he grabs my hand, he starts pulling me towards following them, and he just grabs on. He grabbed on with his tail, and he's like holding my hand like a child, and it's pretty funny. I can find it on YouTube. Okay. So this is me and Cheetah. He let me like pick him up and stuff after he had, you know, walked me a decent amount.
She wanted to bring him home.
So we finally get to the hot springs, and they were just really cool. It was just really neat. I think we went to for like a
Monkey
dollar.
didn't go in the hot springs with you.
he went around there, but I don't think he got in. And then at the end of our trip, they let us go ziplining in Costa Rica, which if you ever go to Costa Rica, definitely go ziplining. It was a great way to see the scenery there. And we did this swing called the Tarzan swing. So it doesn't look like it's very high up in this video, but it's basically they take your gear and they strap you on to this kind of vine, looks like a rope, and then they let you swing down. So this is a video too.
Listen.
So it's very scary. It's like called the Tarzan swing because they let you just swing. And then there's two guys standing at the bottom, they'll start slapping your feet to try to slow you down, and they eventually will I thought a couple times they were going to run off this kind of cliff area, they grab on your feet and slow you down that way. But the initial fall was scariest, the rest of it was kind of fun.
It seems like it's delayed. Let me click it here.
Yeah.
Was that the end of the video?
Yeah, I think it's
Possible, yeah.
Hit the brake button, Ginny, on your controller.
What's the break?
Down below your left and right.
You and your sister
Yeah,
should do
either
the
side.
Amazing Race.
I know.
There. You got it. Just escape on there.
Alright, we're gonna have to.
Because, that's the stuff they do, is zip lining, things like that. And we've done it.
I never thought of
We
that.
should join. Yeah, and she's been in a lot of different places I haven't been.
Do you both know Spanish?
So that was a good part of our medical mission trip. They did have translators with us, but since we're both fluent, so that was really helpful. Translators could be elsewhere, working with people. We were a lot of the medical words. Some of them I was like, I don't know. Yeah, and so I'd have to ask what is this? But for the most part, we were able to communicate really well.
That's a little out of focus now.
Yeah, it does.
Is that where we were at?
Just about.
That's my phone.
So after we ziplined, they also took us to this is Mount Arenal, so this is an active volcano in Costa Rica. And they used the steam from Mount Arenal to heat these hot springs that they have they're not real hot springs like they were before. It's like a resort. So they built this resort. A lot of people vacation there from the States and everything. And you can just sit at the bar and sit in the hot springs. It's really relaxing and a good way to end our trip because we worked really hard over the last few weeks. So then in May of 2012, so about a year ago, I went to Puerto Rico, which I always wanted to go to Puerto Rico. So Puerto Rico is right by Dominican Republic, so an area I'd been to. But I'd always wanted to go there because our Spanish teacher was from there in high school, and she had always told me about this bioluminescent bay that they had, and she said if you ever travel, you need to go to Puerto Rico and you need to go there. So I was excited when I got to go to Puerto Rico. The reason I got to go to Puerto Rico is because of research from NKU. When I was an undergraduate student, I had research on white nose syndrome. So white nose syndrome is a bat disease. It's a fungal disease that grows on bats. It will grow on their wing membranes, their noses, and their ears, and it's caused by a fungus. So I worked with a cave microbiologist, and we worked on treatments for bats and ways to prevent the spread of the fungus from cavers and also from bats to bats. And my sister also worked on this research too, and she developed a protocol for decontamination of caving equipment. And so my research was then focused on looking at antifungals for treatments of the bats. But the disease first appeared in 2006, and since then it's kind of spread all over America, North America, I should say. It's limited to hibernating caves, we believe. They still don't know a lot of the pathogenesis of it. But this was some of our field work where we were testing chemicals in the caves of white nose-infected bats. And because of this research, I got a paper published this past year in March. And then I was president of the Biology Honor Society at NKU. And that Honor Society promotes research. We promote academic success within the biological sciences. And because of being involved in that organization, I got to present my research at their national convention in Puerto Rico. Together we raised enough money to send 15 students to Puerto Rico, like completely paid for the convention. So this is a lighthouse in Puerto Rico. I know it's beautiful. My mom loves lighthouses. Just very relaxed, a lot like Costa Rica. They just kind of, the sense of time isn't there. If something starts at 8 o'clock, it could very well start at 11 or 12 o'clock. Another really cool thing in Puerto Rico is they call them castles, but they're old military forts. And we spent a long time there taking pictures and kind of walking around them. And they're historic sites. They're considered a national park of the country. Another thing very unique to Puerto Rico are the buildings. So their buildings are the architecture is just very beautiful. They have colors, bright, vibrant colors everywhere. And so just like these are just normal buildings in their old San Juan area that I just thought were really cool. So the main reason I wanted to Puerto Rico was to study this bioluminescent bay that my teacher had told me about. So there are microorganisms in the water. They're called Pyridinium bahamenes. And they're only found in 3 places in the world. I think 2 of them are in Costa Rica and 1's in Australia. But basically, these organisms will fluoresce when they feel threatened. And so what we did is we kayaked through a mangrove forest to get back to this bay with the company. And when you put your hand in the water, when you put an oar in the water and you disturb the water and the organisms will feel threatened, then they will glow. But they glow in masses, so it looks just like the water's glowing. And it's I thought it was going to be very dim. I thought it would be something like, my parents are both CSI, so I've seen luminol fluorescence, and I can't even tell luminol is fluorescing. It's very dim. But this was extremely bright. It almost looked, surreal. Like it looked very beautiful. And if you can take the water and put it on your arm, and you'll see them flicker and kind of glow on you as they disappear and they stop glowing. But it was they take pictures of you. It's really hard to show up on camera, so this is my artwork and what it looks like. But it's really, really neat. And this is a picture of a beach in Costa Rica, in Puerto Rico, that is bioluminescence, and these are some of the organisms kind of washed up. But, so overall, these are the places that I was able to go to because of NKU, and I plan to go to more, and I plan to get back to NKU because I'm thankful for them giving me the experiences and the opportunities to go to these places, and with funding for study abroad, and with my research and everything. So I'd like to thank NKU and the Scripps Power Center for letting me talk to you guys tonight and share my experiences with you, and also thank my parents for helping me fund many of the trips.
We will be taking donations out.
Are there any questions?
Can you talk about the things?
Oh,
that you-
yeah. So you guys can get whenever you can come and look at this. So just a couple of things. So this is a llama from Ecuador. It's real llama fur. He's extremely fluffy. My dog has tried to get hold of it a few times. This is a blue-footed boogie, so my favorite thing. So Costa Rica is also really known for their woodworking. So a lot of these things are made from different woods. This is a cutting board, and it's made from every type of wood that they have. And then some of them are labeled on the back. there's a lot of the wood things that are from Costa Rica, and honey, really great honey from Costa Rica, and then this is the Edgar Vega oil that I got my mom, so he's this famous ceramic artist.
It's a Spanish name.
Oh, and then this is, so they take the llama fur also and they'll make really pretty sweaters out of it. So these are very warm too. And they're weird. My mom and I talked about when you wear them, you never get too hot, you never get too cold. It's like it's a very good insulation.
Ginny,
very
how do you spell cheetah's name?
C-H-I-T-A.
What's the name to it?
Didn't you put it?
Pachita and Ginny.
C-H-I-T-A.
Pochita.
There it is.
There it is on the top. We get to see it.
Oh.
So this is Cheetah.
Oh,
He wanted to come
Oh,
home
what?
with her, and she wanted to bring him home.
He didn't want to walk. He didn't like the rocks, so he put his tail around me and then was trying to like he was heavy.
And this is a monkey that doesn't like girls, so there was something
Yeah,
special about
you
this.
know, younger boys for some reason, except
Or maybe he thought I was a boy. I
I
don't
don't
know.
think we're a basketball player.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, and then Ecuador, or not Ecuador, Costa Rica is really known for their kind of embroidery. So this is a hand sewn made bag that we got my mom, like my sister and I went. And they were expensive. They take a lot of time, which I can imagine. So, and then Ecuador has a lot of bags like these. So I don't know if anyone's ever been on a cruise or anywhere out of the country. A lot of times you'll see stuff like this, and it'll have like Jamaica like embroidered on it, or some other country. But a lot of the stuff comes from Ecuador, from a market called the Adobal market in Ecuador, and they'll send it to other countries, and then other countries will put like their name on it. Which was really interesting because I've seen these everywhere. Like every country I've gone to, like Puerto Rico, everywhere I've seen like these bags, but they're from Ecuador. So if anyone has any questions, yeah.
What was your favorite country?
Ooh.
Is that hard?
I think Ecuador, and that could be because I was there the longest, so I got to see most of the country. But the Galapagos were by far probably my favorite thing. But it's a close second with, honestly, the bioluminescent bay in Puerto Rico, because that was really cool. But I probably Ecuador. And I don't think anyone ever thinks to go to Ecuador, to travel there. You know, you hear about a lot of people going to Costa Rica or going to other countries. But Ecuador is it's very inexpensive. It's definitely the most inexpensive, maybe besides Panama, that I've been to. And it's like clean. You don't have to worry about crime there. So if you do like travel, I would travel to Ecuador. Because I don't know, it was great. There's a lot of different things to do there.
Only one bus break down.
Only one misfortune. You know, we did have one girl lose her passport when we were there. And it was right before everyone was leaving, and she was the one that was going to the Galapagos with us, so we had to go to the embassy. But I mean, we didn't really have any no crime, no. I never felt, scared or anything. Very safe, very beautiful. Yeah.
How do you get to go to the Galapagos? Like, can anybody go?
Mm-hmm. Anybody can go. So you basically you can go online. You can look at different cruises. They call them cruises. They're yacht kind of cruises, and you can sign up for them that way. And so you'll be, you can be on the island. You're always with groups. So by law, you have to have a tour guide, someone who's a certified tour guide for the Galapagos Islands to go with you, and they will be your tour guide and the person that you would talk to about any problems on the boat. They stay with you the entire time. And then I think we were on a boat with like 15 people maybe, so a really small boat.
So you flew from South America to Ecuador, from Ecuador to the Galapagos?
They have on their big island, they have an airway strip, and then you took a bus, and then you take a boat, and you kind of island hop. So you're able to see. And they have, I didn't include all my pictures, they have flamingos there, they have penguins there. They just have an extreme biodiversity, unlike anywhere else. But definitely bring, if you go, medicine with you for seasickness, because I didn't, and I had to borrow someone, so I was very sick the first night. But it was
why did you get seasick from the?
So we're on the yacht island hopping, and they would travel at night. And I like never get sick. I never, get car sick or anything. So I didn't even think about bringing medication because that was the last part of my trip too in Ecuador, and I was, getting ready for the 2 weeks before that. So I didn't even think to bring medicine. And the first night we ate dinner, and they're like, all right, we're heading out, to deep sea. And I'm like sitting there and I go, oh my gosh, I'm getting so sick. But yeah, we would travel at night. So some of the islands, they don't look far away, but they'd be like 8 hours away. I think the furthest was 8 hours that we would travel, and the closest was like 4. So it was kind of hard to sleep at night, but it was worth it.
I heard that the aromas on those islands are kind of pungent.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Because there's, it can be.
Don't they restrict the number of people that
Mm-hmm. There's like a quota, and I think in the next couple of years they're gonna
Shut it
shut it down a little bit. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're talking about just the main island.
So I didn't do like the paperwork for our trip or whatever, but I think that there was some paperwork that the study abroad office had to do for us to be able to go, and you have to apply to be able to go.
So you got that done in advance?
Yeah, we planned probably like almost a year in advance. I went in the summer of 2010, I think, 2011, and in the fall of 2010, we were planning for it. So.
How long was the cruise around?
It was 5 days.
5 days.
It was 5 days and I think like 6 nights.
And that's a typical time.
I think you can probably go for longer, but I think like the shortest amount you can go for is 5 days, and we saw a decent amount. Like I don't know if my stomach could handle it any more days. I was pretty sick.
That's good to know.
Yeah. So I mean that was probably. I mean if I could go back on any of the trips, it'd be Galapagos. It was just beautiful and very relaxing, I guess too.
Very good.
Well, if that's it, are there any other questions? Well, thank you all for coming. I'm Paulette with the Scripps Howard Center. So thank you again. If you're interested in any of the other lectures, we can sell you tickets this evening, or you can visit our website and buy them online. Let's give a big round of applause to